yeah, I'm just not gonna talk that much about TouchDesigner specifically. I'm gonna mostly talk about design and focusing a little bit on new media. Um, so yeah, for everyone, some were already confused in the chat. I'm from Berlin, Germany originally, but I live in Seoul, South Korea currently. I'm a media artist and I mostly focus on audio-visual work. When I lived in Berlin, I originally majored in digital and print media design. And I also worked for quite a few years as a designer as well. But after I turned 19, I moved to Seoul, South Korea. And while living here, I went back to university, again, to study media, but this time from an IT perspective and with a focus on media art. And this is when I've discovered TouchDesigner and pretty much started my career as an artist. And even though I use TouchDesigner now for nearly everything, I find that I still use a lot of the design knowledge that I've acquired back during my studies in Berlin and while working for multiple companies. And I just wanted to share some basic knowledge with you today, because not everyone who comes to TouchDesigner comes from a design background. Like, you guys all come from very different backgrounds. So maybe not everyone knows. Maybe there's something helpful for you that I'm sharing today. So let's jump right in. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about why design is important. So who here can tell me whose work this is that I'm showing right now? You can just type it in the chat.
Arnon, right?
Right.
I saw this. This was in LA like 2 weeks ago for some multimedia outdoor event.
I think so, maybe. I'm not sure.
It's like
Actually,
little pieces of tofu.
yeah, I try to find a work that maybe not as many people have seen from Instagram or YouTube or the many interviews and stuff he does. So yeah, this is Refik Anado's work. And this brings me to my first point. Design can really help make you and your work be recognizable. Let's say you go to the store and buy a soft drink. You have this huge selection between all kinds of brands, but you will probably go for something that you already know, like a Coke, maybe a Sprite, because you know the taste, you know the brand, you know it's always going to be the same. And kind of similar in media art, people tend to like works just because they know who made it. Especially if that person is famous or has a great reputation, people will look even at new work of them and be like, oh, I love this. And it's not really their own opinion. It's just based on an opinion they already have about this person and their artwork. And this kind of brings me already to my next point. Design can really increase the perceived value of something. So an example we all know, Apple. Most people buy Apple products not because it's actually great tech, but because in their minds, Apple is a brand that makes great tech. And they will buy anything from Apple, even if the product is not that great, actually. So next up, we have user experience. User experience is design is very important in user experience. And I'm not just talking about application design in specific. There's user experience to basically anything. Like somebody viewing an artwork or interacting with an installation is also user experience. And there's a few things to consider when designing user experiences, or such as interface, timing, usability, content, and the expectation. Not to name any names or shame anyone, it's really difficult to create perfect artwork. And even big media companies or really famous artists don't get it right all the time. But I often see works that have really bad interfaces, and it can impact the whole experience and perception of the artwork itself. Maybe you have put a lot of thought into this project, but your interface lacked testing and therefore it doesn't work properly. So as a result, the viewer won't be able to enjoy the work. And I think that's really sad. So going to my next point, last but not least, visibility. Design can really help you stand out from a sea of maybe similar artworks. And if done right, catch the viewer's attention in a positive way. So for my next part of the presentation, I'm going to go into a few concepts for you guys to keep in mind when maybe making your next project. First up is KISS, K-I-S-S, which is an abbreviation of the phrase, keep it simple, stupid, which has been coined by Callie Johnson in the 60s and states that most systems work best if they are kept simple rather than made complicated. This image here is an artwork from my close friend, Jang Yoon, called The Aesthetic Point of View, which is an installation that uses our TouchDesigner Unity and the Connect for real-time face tracking. And this work uses anamorphic illusions to influence and affect the way the audience absorbs information and when viewing an artwork. And I just really love this work because it's so simple and conveys the message perfectly, but still is aesthetically pleasing as well. That's why I put it here as an example. Next up is white space. This is kind of similar to the KISS concept, or kind of goes into the KISS concept. Don't be afraid to leave space in your visuals. It doesn't have to be white, but you don't have to saturate everything with information. I often see works that use a lot of different technologies and visuals and sounds, and it's really complicated and makes the viewer feel really overwhelmed. And in the end, I still don't know what this artwork is trying to tell me, or why this project is here. What is this about? So instead of bombarding the viewer with information, leave some white space to breathe and like draw attention to what's most important to your project. Not saying using a lot of tech is bad, just some guidance. Very cool. And then next we have contrast. Contrast can be important for a number of reasons, some of which are similar to the two concepts before. Contrast can really help make designs legible and make important elements stand out. But this can also be important when it comes to execution. These both images, I'm sorry, they're really bad quality. It's some images I took when testing a project. These are images from a project I did with the artist Seo Dong-ju and called Animal Beats. It's a 2-channel video and about ASEAN animals from the ASEAN region. And this exhibition features not just media artworks, but also non-media, like traditional artworks. So in the same room, so the room, we can't make the room dark because there's other artworks that have to be viewed. And it's not really ideal conditions for using projection, but there was no other way. And there was no way to get better, brighter projectors or dim the room. So by making these visuals, it was really important to work with contrast. So on the left side, there is, you can see there's just like an overall kind of color. being projected, but this is not really what the visual looked like on my PC screen, computer screen. So on the right side is after really upping the contrast, you can actually see that it was not just some color gradient, but actually had these lines going through. And this wasn't just this one scene. There were a few scenes where I really had to up the contrast. But this also doesn't apply just to situations like this really specific one. Can also be, I lost where I was going, what I was going to say. If you, for example, projection map on a huge building, people are gonna look at it from far away, and you won't be able to see details and a color palette without much contrast. So be aware of your environment when you're making visuals. Something that maybe looks great on your computer screen doesn't really translate into real life. Next up, we have hierarchy. So this is especially useful if you're creating UIs. Visual hierarchy is the principle of arranging elements to show their order of importance. For example, in text, you have title, subtitle, main text, and captions, maybe even some quotes. And yeah, to establish visual hierarchy, there's a few things you can use, like size. Users use larger elements more easily. Color, bright color typically attracts more attention than muted colors. Contrast, like I said before, dramatically contrasted colors are more eye-catching. Alignment, out of alignment elements stand out over aligned ones. Repetition, repeating styles can suggest content is related to each other. And proximity, closely placed elements seem related to each other. And also, again, white space, more space around elements actually draws the eye towards them. And texture, richer textures stand out over flat ones. In connection to hierarchy, I'm going to talk about typography just a little bit. So typography is the art of arranging letters and text in a way that makes the copy legible, clear, and visually appealing. So typography is not just about choosing a beautiful font. It's a vital component of any design. And good typography will establish a strong visual hierarchy, provide a graphic balance, and set the overall tone of your project. So to give you some pointers for somebody who maybe never worked with typography, a lot of people are confused often about typeface and font. So typeface is the entire family of fonts, and font is just a member of a typeface. So for Helvetica, for example, you have Helvetica regular, oblique, light, light oblique, bold, bold oblique, and I think there's even more than that. And then there are also a lot of different typeface styles, but I'm only going to talk about the three biggest categories, which are serif, which are these small features at the end of the strokes of each letter. These are actually tested to be the most legible in longer texts. So usually books use serif fonts. Then we have sans serif, which means just there's no serifs. There's no stroke at the end. There's no extra at the stroke, at the end of the stroke. These are mostly used online because they look very clear on screens. And then there's also decorative fonts, which is more, which these fonts are more visually interesting than actually readable. And then last but not least, I want to talk about color. I'm always surprised by how many people say they've never heard or thought about this. But color actually conveys a lot of meaning. So brands use color to convey their image. For example, red is perceived as exciting and energetic. So it's often used for entertainment, for example, Netflix or Nintendo or YouTube, or food like Coca-Cola or McDonald's, they use red in the logo. Green, for example, resembles harmony, growth, and fertility. So we see green for brands that are environmentally friendly or in education. Dark blue, which is not on here, but dark blue conveys trust, loyalty, and responsibility. Oftentimes, banks use dark blue. And black is elegant, strong, and authoritarian. So we usually see black in high value brands or designer brands. I also wanted to show you a media art example. So this work here on the left is by TeamLab, and you can see it's very colorful and has a really commercial feel to it, which that's totally on brand for TeamLab. That's what they do. So that's great for them. That works perfectly for them. And then on the other side is a very black and white work. This is not a black and white image. The work looks like this, which is mostly used by artists who maybe are a little bit more on the serious side with works, and their works focus on more like research type stuff, have a really serious feel. Maybe the topic is more serious. Yeah, that's all from me for now. I hope there was some insightful information for you guys. And please remember, all these concepts are not set in stone. You can break them whenever you want. So yeah, that's it from me.
All right, thank you so much. That was a really good overview, like the basic graphic design.
I'm going to share my screen. I'll show you a couple key moments in recent years that kind of led me to TouchDesigner. I actually only started using TouchDesigner back in February, and have learned a lot since then. So the first one I just want to show is, make sure I'm sharing sound. Yeah, this piece by Play Mode Studio. They did this really great interactive piece. Interactive piece at EDC Las Vegas last year. And picture, don't want that. Where it's audio and light installation. The audio coming through? Bileam, just quick, audio's coming through?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Great.
Working.
So this is a light tunnel that people could go, and the light responded with the audio in a very fun way. And this was like a 4-minute experience that was quite immersive. And this really kind of drew me into generative art. I then started kind of experimenting. I come from a photography background, so Adobe, Photoshop, and After Effects were 2 programs I used pretty much daily until I discovered TouchDesigner. So I started making like kind of more graphic animations using the joint division waveforms. But doing this in After Effects proved to be very frustrating. Having to render every frame before you can really view it, which led me to TouchDesigner. And this past April, there's a 36 days of typography challenge where each day you create a new letter. And I decided to approach that challenge using only TouchDesigner and really trying to challenge myself to express different ideas visually for each letter of the day. And it's like, I thought every day could be fun. Maybe 2 weeks into it, I kind of was hitting walls and really trying to push myself to try new ideas. And today I'm actually going to dive into TouchDesigner and explain a couple of the ideas and some tips and tricks that I learned along the way. So everyone can see this. Let's dive into the
Yep.
Let me just hide. Okay. So the first project is was the letter E, obviously. So I did, a big little e's instancing into a big E, and really to kind of get a bit more granular. This was more about the form and shape of each letter. So I started with a SOP in this case, and two important elements is the extrude depth that get an actual 3D geometry from the text. And then, obviously with the extrude depth, you can go quite deep. And because we're using little e's right now, we can just kind of really play with how deep the shape is of each instance. I'm gonna keep it pretty small. The other important kind of trick I learned was to get the E to really be centered in the 3D space. I just take the extrude depth and in the Z translate, divide that by 2, just so that it's extruding, and in Z space it's going from the middle. So then just going through this network a little bit, we have a set of SOPs being used for the geometry, and then the alternate SOPs being used for the instancing. So I had that connected to a switch so that we can just easily flip between the two different typefaces. So big E made up of little e's, little e made up of big e's. That was essentially the first concept. And then just a couple other things I learned is, without this resample operator, it has at least fewer points. And just using resample to kind of generate more points between each of the main points. And then again, just throw it into a null, and then the null goes into a chop. And then this chop was then run through a noise to just kind of randomize the size. If I put it on a limit, you can see it kind of snaps a bit more into place and not as smooth of a growth. And then all that chop information got sent into the instance section, into the TX, and then the scale. And then the color is just generated from the two lights in the camera. So that we have a blue light here, which is offset. I basically just offset it in virtual space, just rotating the active viewer, just to kind of position it to the right of the camera. And then the opposite light's just on the opposite side. And then that's just going out to a simple render network where I added a white background. And then again, this is like, sometimes they can be just like super simple and straightforward. And again, it's really about more of the points that create the geometry of the letter for this example. The next example is going to be another approach using using instancing for rotation. And again, I'm starting with a grid, and really just I could instance different shapes. So I'm using a rectangle right now, but we could use triangles instead, or we can use a box and have 3D geometry. And if we like zoom into the geometry, we can see these are actual boxes and not just rectangles. But then again, most of this is essentially taking the SOP to chop and then applying different noise values to the X, Y, and rotation. And then where the letters come in is I'll essentially take the resolution from the grid as the resolution for the text. And then I have several different typefaces here, which look quite pixelated at the moment. And then again, just doing a top to chop using the shuffle operator to get the entire image rather than one line. And then compositing that with just a simple pattern that's going from 1 to 0 and calling that rotation. So we're essentially just spinning the rotation of these points in Z space. And with this, I've made it interactive as well. So we have 3 different sliders so we can add the grid size, get a bit more resolution. We can change the typeface. So there's a thick O, here's a thinner one, and here's, again, a different shape. And again, this is an experiment to really see the different forms of the letter. And then finally, we can add some background noise, which you kind of lose the effect of the O. So I've just kind of turned that down just to see how you can bring in some noise and really create a lot of interesting patterns with that. But that's all essentially getting thrown into a merge, slowed down a little bit, and then used as instancing information. So that's, again, that was another kind of simpler approach. This next one I spent a lot more time on. You can see the network's quite a lot bigger. I have quite a few different sliders just to kind of play with different elements. So right now we have G is for grid. This is kind of my starting point. And using the grid and displacement in the Z axis to really play with warping the grid. So I've added quite a few different sliders here so we can control how much we have an LFO, which is going from negative to positive. So it's going either in negative Z space or positive Z space, but we'll just disable that for now so we can see what's happening. So we can slide it back and forth. I have it set into a math so we can change the range. We want it to really pop out. We can bring it to 10 and see how it really gets distorted in Z space. I'm just limiting it so it's even numbers. I have different typefaces. That's again, just using a simple top to chop and just shuffling all the channels into by name, and then reinserting that as the Z point information. And that's essentially giving us that displacement in Z space. But I've also added an audio reactive element to it. So I'm just going to turn on my audio device. Just let's see if it plays. So we can switch to a different pattern. So this is essentially just displaying the waveform in real time. And that's, using a simple, again, top to top, using that information it as the Z, inserting that into the Z position. Or we could switch to the feedback display where it trails from one side to another. And I also added a grid slider so we can bring the grid up or down and really see different elements of the letter. If I just switch to a different letter just to see the typeface and how it really impacts it. And this again is really fun and really simple, just like converting a top into a chop. But this doesn't just have to be using text. I also made a webcam input, so I could switch to my webcam in here, and it should. This one, that's fine. But yeah, so you can throw a webcam in, pretty much have a lot of fun with that. But, it doesn't look like the device is on. And no audio. So just going back and here we go. So there I am. I make the grid smaller. Kind of see my face popping out of the grid. But this is the typography one, so I'll switch it back to the typeface. So that's pretty much all the three that I was going to be presenting.
So hello, it's nice to be here, everybody. Welcome to this premiere of my explanation about the frog effect, which I would guess would be kind of a guide to survivance into graphic design when you're not a graphic designer. So some of you might know me as my alias Smooth is Fast. So I've been doing dailies for like over a year now on Instagram. I'm right now like on a little break. I'm kind of like transitioning to like bigger personal projects, so trying to focus on like building something that's does not have to come out every day, because Josh can tell us it's kind of tiring. So before I start, let me tell you a couple of things about me, so you know I'm not a total fraud. I work at Up Studio, so I'll show you a couple of our works here, I think. So I've been working there for 5 years. Over there, I'm the director of technology. I've been there for 5 years, right out of the gates from the National Theatre School of Canada, where I was groomed to be a video and light designer for theatre. So my background is well more accessed on, I would say, like live arts. Let's put that a little slower. Live arts and those kind of things. But through time, UB has like expanded in doing a lot of outdoor experiences and interactive experiences. So TouchDesigner has been a really great tool for that kind of stuff, because you can do very simple project and very complex project while staying in the same framework and reusing the same tools again and again. So the first question that comes to mind is how much graphic design does the director of technology? The answer would be not that much, but I do a shit ton of TouchDesigner through my weeks. I do mainly like backend stuff, so like video server. I do a lot of LED design, light designs through like LED mapping, pixel mapping, and creating tools in to be used in a production pipeline, like standalone servers and how to make them run like for the next 10 years and like to turn off at night and stuff like that. So I wanted to nest the angle of this talk into something that I nurtured and started loving in the past year, because I do consider myself as a TouchDesigner developer, but do I consider myself as a TouchDesigner artist? That seems like a whole different question. So this feeling I've been nurturing for the last year, and I think a lot of people in this community will probably feel the same, and is the imposter syndrome, of course. So through this time, I've started really liking this feeling and kind of embracing it, and even it kind of became like a deterministic quality of my work. And like I've been saying, so I think a large part of this community is stricken by this pathos, but today I want to explore with you, my friends, why this is a good thing. So speaking of the community, I observed there's collisions between the type of individuals that populate it. So I see like two big types, and let's be like really grotesque in our description of those types of people. So there's like more like the IT crowd, the computer science, like those people who's like, yeah, GLSL is super easy. It's like a declination of C and blah, blah, blah. And like those people are like super annoying to me because I guess I'm quite jealous. And then there's more like this other side of people who are more, I would say, like on my profile. So like more like let's say like theater based people, or with an artistic background, and who got into like TouchDesigner through what I like to call gateway softwares like Isadora or Processing, Bileam, all those real-time creating software, but who don't really enable you to do anything else outside of what the program wants you to do. So of course, and I realize with the subject of this talk, like there might be a lot of exception, because I guess a lot of you are inclined to graphic design. But in my experience with the people I meet in Montreal who use TouchDesigners, and like at the summit 2 years ago, I don't know a lot of people who are like academically graphic designers, except of course Caroline, who just like came in and ruined my whole hypothesis of today, but whatever.
Sorry.
Okay, so this was the stuff we do at UpStudio. Let me transition to what was my shortcut again? Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is some of the work I've done through Smooth is Fast. It's been handpicked, so like I think those ones are okay, but there's a lot of less good ones. So yeah, speaking about like what you see on Instagram and Twitter and all those platforms, if you search like creative coding, generative art, and such, all those like real-time hashtags, you're gonna find a lot of very good stuff. And that's what's so surprising to me, is that you see a lot of like high quality stuff, and then like you don't see a lot of people with actual background in graphic design. Once again, I reckon that this crowd is probably a lot more like graphic designers than other crowds of TouchDesigner, but than the Gen Pop, let's call it like this. So the kind of question about, so what gives? Why is there so many good graphic talent with so little graphic background? So circling back to the imposter feeling that I will now be calling the fraud effect. Yes, that's the fraud effect. So how to turn this bug into a feature. And this is like a super meta for me, because I am like the embodiment of this sentiment. Like a couple weeks ago, when Isabelle wrote to me and suggested me to participate to this talk. Hello, Isabelle. I was like, oh no, fuck this. Like,
hi,
what? Hello. Like, what can I tell to all those like highly intelligent and capable people about graphic design? Because I can talk all day about projector calibration and pixel mapping, but then going to like a specific crowd and talking like what is color matching, what is a good shape, how do you put those things in relationship into each one? And like this is something I don't feel necessarily capable of like talking about. But then I remember the raw functionality of the fraud effect is to kind of jump into the puddle with the like fuck it attitude, you know? A little water. So then I was talking to my girlfriend, and she was like, oh no, please, dude, you're not gonna sit in front of all these people and feel sorry for yourself by calling yourself an imposter and blah, blah, blah. And then she said a lot more stuff, which was very smart, and that I will now use as if I had thought about it once again. Because when I started these drawings, I was quite secretive about it, and I was not ashamed, but I didn't feel at all like the confidence of showing things out of this like graphic things that I did, you know. But I think the secret is that with time, the confidence grow, and the more you do, the more you show, and the more you feel good about yourself, or not necessarily yourself, but the things you do. So with time, I even got to like start liking my own stuff, and that was getting like pretty interesting to me. like once again, I start to have like opinions on color matching and shapes and movement, which before I didn't feel like I have the legitimacy to talk about. Now that I have experimented through like so much iteration, I felt like I can ground my opinions. So the main take on it is that at the beginning of an artistic practice, nobody's gonna like what you do, not even you. And I think that's like totally normal. But little by little, you have to do those hops into opportunity. And this is where like TouchDesigner is such a great community for this, because derivative, especially through Isabelle, give me a lot of room to show my work, give me a lot of opportunities. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're only waiting for us to like take more space and to be more present on like Instagram, of course, but all those other spaces. So by doing regular work, doing constant and regular work on your tool, in our case, TouchDesigner, you create that soil. And from this floor, and from this soil, there's some, from the soil, there will be an occasion who will flourish. And at some point, I think it's important to own your work and to be proud of it. And this is the final leap from the fraud effect into the frog effect, where the superpower is not to care, not to be like, yeah, fuck this, I can talk about anything, I'm not an artist, because that's not a productive attitude. It's how you would say that? It's something, it's a bouclier. It's like something to protect yourself. But the frog effect is being aware of that shield. That's the word I was looking for. And it's seizing the opportunities, because when circling back to when Isabelle she didn't invite me, but she asked, oh, maybe you should do the talk. I was like, why would I not do it? What's the excuse on it? Because I didn't want to do it, but then I was like, yeah, it's just an opportunity to seize. And of course, both go one in order of the other. So it's a form of like intellectual and artistic emancipation, this frog effect. It allows you to care and to feel good about yourself, but also you can maintain this distance, which for artists like me is important, between the audience view and your personal view on your work. Because the work you do is something very private, and people like who don't like it, to me, it gets very aggressive, but no one never doesn't like it, or they don't tell me they don't like it. So let me finish with like 2 notes I have. So I reckon that this frog effect is my benevolent approach to like fake it till you make it, which sounds very arrogant to me. So it's like a smooth approach to it. And then I wanted to take the time just to say that I heard recently something, and it was like, like working hard will always yield great results. And what I heard with the sentence is that it's one of the most privileged things to say. And I think it's important to like put this out there, I'm well aware there is like the hard work is only part of it and the answer, and there's like a ton of extra erratic situation to factor in. So don't take this too, don't be too dogmatic about it, especially as like a straight educated white man. It was important to me like to precise this, that not everybody can just do hard work and have success. And then on a actually third final note, hopefully, because I'm very happy to talk today to this community, but I think what I would like to do now is like, where can we find some new like curated space? Because Instagram will always be Instagram, and it's something quick and dirty, but I feel like we're in need to find somewhere where we can showcase art, where we can curate art easily and have like exhibition and stuff. So if anybody has a project like of that type of thing, I'd be super interested to jump in. And please, this is the end of my presentation. If you have any question, you can find me on Instagram. If you want me to share a network, if you want to do a collab, please reach out. This community has been great with me. So let's not be shy and let's talk to each other.